Hello everyone. I am sure some of you will be writing UPSC Civil Services Mains examination this year in September, right? And for those who are preparing for next year also, one very important formula for success is to practice previous year's questions. When you read a subject, you try to mold that content, whatever you are having, into a particular answer. That is going to help you very much, because when you go to the examination in a short span of 8 to 9 minutes, you will have to write 200 words. There is very little time for you to think there. So it is very important that when you read a topic, when you read for 1 hour or when you listen to a class, we should be able to convert it into the examination mode, right? So it's a very important point you need to know. So fundamentally, if you see, practicing previous year's questions will be a very useful method for understanding your preparedness to the examination. So what we will do is, for the benefit of those who are writing examination this year, mains, and those who want to write next year, that is 2024, we will have a series of analysis of previous year's questions one by one. So that will help you to regroup and consolidate whatever you have studied. Let us take up this question today from the previous year's papers. To what extent did the role of moderates prepare a base for wider freedom movement? Comment. This is the question. Friends, the first point here, if you need to know the specific answer, that you have to say moderates or the moderate phase in Indian national movement is a stepping stone for the next phase of national movement. We have a very important interpretation in the history of Indian national movement that the 3 phases of national movement are not mutually exclusive, but they are mutually inclusive. Every phase of national movement is a stepping stone for the next phase of the national movement. So to be very clear, without moderates there are no extremists. Without moderates and extremists, even Gandhian phase would not have been so successful in attracting participation from the various sections of the society. So thus moderate phase is important because it was the first step towards the nation building. It was the first step towards starting the national movement. It was the first step to create the idea of India as mentioned in the Congress objectives, nation building, right? So that is how you just need to start. Then friends, the specific role of moderates, the role, if you see after starting like this, you can write one by one. You say this is the first stepping stone for national movement, not only national movement, for the whole process of nation building, stepping stone for the national movement. And as you know friends, the moderate phase is generally described as between 1885 and of course 1905. This is the phase of moderate era. Okay, the next important point is, it is also write like 2-3 lines you can mention like this to begin this answer. The next important is, what are the specific role? We need to hammer out the specific contribution. First of all, the moderate phase is very interesting because it was the first attempt to unravel the true nature of the British rule. All these people are intellectuals. If you have read it already, you please understand or please recall that moderates are very loyal to the British initially. Long live British Queen. That is how they used to start the moderate sessions, Congress sessions. But then they are the intellectuals who tried to analyze the various aspects of the ill impact of the British rule. For example, the celebrated moderate, the grand old man of India, Dalabhai Nauroji, he has actually was the person who mooted the idea of the drain theory of wealth as early as 1860s. And of course, as we understand later, this has become a widely popular, the economic ideological framework for Indian national movement, to argue that British rule was very detrimental to India. Okay, so the first point I want to tell you is that moderates were the intellectuals. Moderates laid the intellectual foundation for Indian national movement. They are the people who provided a framework, ideological framework, intellectual foundation, and also provided an ideological framework. Okay, this is a very important, and expand these points when you actually practice these answers. Well, ideological framework. So friends, a vortex or framework is very important for any struggle. Ideological framework. For example, the fundamental aspect of Indian national movement, the ideological framework of Indian national movement is that the British rule was inherently evil to India. It sapped the vitality of Indian economy, that it looted Indian people, it crippled the political initiative, it stopped the civil liberties, it led to a deindustrialization initially, then lopsided industrialization, or in the second half of 19th century onwards. So you see any aspect, social, economic, cultural, political, all aspects, British rule was a loss to India. And friends, this is the ideological framework for Indian national movement, and moderates were the first people to work and provide this ideological framework for Indian national movement. Okay, and in fact, the subsequent phases of Indian struggle also, Indian national movement also, this ideological framework never changed. It continued to be there. That is one important contribution. Then friends, political synthesis and creation of or nurturing of the public opinion. You say nurturing of public opinion. This is a very important thing. This is also their contribution. All these people, they are very educated, elitist society. They are intellectuals, they are writers, they are industrialists, they are lawyers predominantly. Now what they have done is, they had actually provided the political platform. In fact, the very Indian National Congress, if you see Gramsci's terminology, it is, it's providing headquarters for the war of position, for Indian national movement. So political synthesis of public opinion and creation of public opinion, political education was a very important aspect that the moderates have contributed by various associations, by writings. For example, if you see Surendranath Banerjee, who set up Indian Association of Calcutta, it is actually the first All India Association in a way to have the name Indian. Then later, of course, Congress came up, but he had already organized All India meeting of all the political associations even before the Indian National Congress could meet in 1885. So, through their writings, this was by their speech, by their writings. When moderates write a letter to government, when they write a petition to government, it is not actually addressed to the government only. It also addressed to the educated middle class. So, attracting the educated middle class towards Indian national movement is very important. The social base of Indian national movement in the time of moderates was elitist, then it came up to the middle class, and that is a very important framework for so the social base for Indian national movement subsequently. So social base was created for Indian national movement. Then the next important, of course, this is done by various writings. in the newspapers, you know, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, for example, is a very well-known moderate. He had a newspaper, he had a publication called Sudharak. The budget analysis of Gopal Krishna Gokhale is so well read that even British officers up to the level of Governor Generals and Viceroys used to read. In Britain, British parliamentarians used to read the finer analysis, economic analysis written by Gopal Krishna Gokhale in his paper. They used to wait for his paper. Okay? And you know, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he is a very great writer. He writes very lucidly, you know, very sharp criticism. He is not a great orator, of course. You know, an orator is not an orator. Whereas Tilak, extremist, na, Tilak speaks, his blood will boil, he will get BP, we will get BP. We feel like shooting everyone. This is what in 1897, you know, the same thing has happened. We have Chapekar brothers. They took to violence after reading what Tilak wrote. But Gopal Krishna Gokhale is a moderate, is a cool man. His writings are very crisp. Orator, he may not be, you know. There are different types of orators. If somebody speaks, we feel like sleeping. If somebody speaks, we feel like fighting. If somebody writes, we feel like thinking. And Gopal Krishna Gokhale is like this. So all these things have really helped. And then friends, the last point, because in a short answer question, the last point is they had actually designed a very good method of starting the national movement. Initially they were loyal to the British. They thought the Indian masses were not ready. But friends, at the same time, moderates were the cold-blooded murderers of British rule in India. Remember this. If you read Bipin Chandra, Sumit Sarkar, Panikkar, okay, you tend to read this. I suggest you also read some of the write-ups in journals like, you know, Indian Historical Review, Studies in History, which is published by Jawaharlal Nehru University, then IAS HR, Indian Economic and Social History Review. These are the, these are the history journals which give you very good crisp writings by the same authors who wrote, you know, the books what are recommended for you. So like that anyway. So the loyalty should never be misunderstood. You know, on one hand, they were actually praising the British, saying long live British Queen. On the other hand, they are digging pits behind them, cold-blooded murderers of Indian national movement. So friends, the solid base created by the moderates in ideological, intellectual arenas, political education arenas, was instrumental in taking the national movement to the next level. So without moderates, as I said, there are no extremists. Without moderate and extremists, we cannot even say Gandhian phase was alone would be adequate to get us freedom. So all are complementary. We need to acknowledge and thank the immense contribution made by the moderates for the national movement. So this is how you have to write in 200 words. We will take up one more question later. Okay.